The YouTube. Like, did you? Oh, okay, we are live.
Okay, let's wait for some people. I think we can start now.
Yeah, sure.
And as people keep coming in, we can just proceed from there. Uh, so we start the live today. It's our first episode of whether AI will take our jobs away someday. And this episode is actually a part of a podcast series that we decided to start because we thought like there are lots of questions people usually have, like as the emergence of AI, like whether it is going to take away our jobs, whether we should switch our career, like how it is going to go, is it going to be a disaster, and then what kind of platforms can we learn machine learning from, what are the differences. So there are many questions that I hear from people, and I also see a lot of discussions going on the social media, and that is where the idea came from, that perhaps from our experience being researchers working with AI sometimes, just like in the case of Iheb, um, so to share some ideas and perspective for the people out there, whoever would be interested. So this platform of mine, it's Particles to Politics. It's for very relaxed discussion on a number of topics. So we are not really trying to reach like academic level of complexity. We are looking forward for relaxed discussions on a number of topics that might be too difficult to discuss, for example, on other platforms, because sometimes we see a lot of information bias, and sometimes we see lots of very heated like sides taking over. So I think my objective for this platform is to particularly encourage people learn different perspectives. So it's not only that what we share, but also for you to go forward and look up yourself more information. So this platform will help you to get perspective, but it's not going to tell you what you should do with your life or who you should vote, because I'll be talking on a number of topics from particle physics to geopolitics. So the idea is for you to be encouraged to look up information more and to share with you some rationalist perspective that I have as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shirajum Monira. I'm a particle physicist working in one of the largest experiments at CERN, which is basically one of the world's largest accelerator complex humans ever built. And here, as a guest, we have Iheb, a friend of mine from Tunisia, and I'm so happy to have him here because he has been in touch with me for quite some times, and we have been talking a lot about his projects, his aspirations, and he's so passionate about what he does. And when I was thinking about a person who could actually, share his perspective with young people, the first name that came to my mind is Iheb. So, Iheb, very happy to have you here. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Siraj Room. So, the first thing I want to say is that I'm very happy and glad to have to be here and to be discussing with Siraj Room. She is one of the most inspirational people in my network, and I think if she is someone that keeps me inspired every day. And yes, we did talk about different approaches to uh, to start this series of talks. So I will jump right through. So I'm Iheb. I'm Iheb Gafsi. I'm a 22-year-old engineering student in Tunisia, if known as the National Institute of Applied Sciences and Technology, the biggest engineering institute in Tunisia. So I I had the pleasure to go through different uh, to basically go through different sciences and explore where I find myself at best. And I generally find myself very glad to communicate to different people from different backgrounds and consider consider different approaches um, to learn about more about science and philosophy and etc. So I find this particular talk extremely interesting. Thank you, Shirajum.
It's a pleasure, really. And as you are here with us today, would you like to tell a bit more about your academic research? What kind of research you do? What you study on?
Okay. So basically, my research is mainly focused on machine learning. For those who don't know, I will try to explain what machine learning is and in which exact parts I find myself specializing. So, machine learning started very earlier in the last century because we had we the basic intuition behind machine learning is basically making a system that allows you to predict the facts. What I mean, for example, like making a mathematical model, like for example, just an equation or a certain calculation that will help you having I don't know any kinds of inputs and trying to estimate some particular outputs that match. For example, the simplest example of all can be what we call regression. It is basically having a history of observations. So, for example, the temperature. So we have the temperature for the whole day, and we based on the previous estimates, the calculations, we try to make something that helps us either using a paper and a pen just to calculate, or just using, if something is bigger, using a computer program to help us doing so, which means we have to predict for our previous example, I predicted the next chapter, the next observation, let's say, that we have not seen before. This is the main intuition behind machine learning, and for me, I basically focus on how to design architectures and how to improve previous machine learning paradigms to basically understand more, get more to enhance the AI that we live with today, and enhance the computability and all of this spectrum.
Yeah, thanks for this is a very nice explanation, really. And for people who do not know much about the difference between AI and ML, the difference is that artificial intelligence, when we talk about artificial intelligence, like in a very, very basic concept of this is to try mimic the human brain. So human brain can act on a lot of things. For example, it can learn language, it can speak, it can process language, it can do decision making and all these things. So what Iheb is working on is basically machine learning. So machine learning is basically teaching the machines or the computers to learn from data. And this is a very, very basic idea for those of the people who are not from science background at all and may not know a lot of technical terms. So, okay, let's move on to the next question that really baffles me. Is that from a very young age, I have been very, very curious by nature. So whenever there is a new technology, something that becomes a hype, I automatically find the interest to learn more about it. However, I noticed that there is also a pattern how people find something interesting. Like they may just sometimes play video games and that's how they become interested on video games. But that's not how I came in touch with AI, by the way. So this is how it started, is that I started my PhD, and all of a sudden one day I was asked, like, if we have to test some data, we have to test some models. If the models are good enough for the particle identification, don't worry too much about this identification part, but anyways, for my research we need to identify the particles we are looking at, right? So we are like colliding a lot of particles, and then a lot of particles are coming out of it, right? So so when I'm talking about colliding particles, I'm talking about colliding beams. So in Large Hadron Collider, that's what we do. We try to recreate the conditions of the earlier universe, and so we have to collide beams, and from that beams we have billions and trillions of particles being generated. Now, how do you recognize these particles? There are different ways physicists do it. One way is that the particle identification, and so then the test was that my colleagues, they developed some model, machine learning models, okay, a very simple, nice model, and that tried to predict the identity of the particles. So now I was given the task and I started working on it, and that is how basically I became absolutely hooked on machine learning. Okay, I realized how much potential it has, and it's very interesting because although I have been programming a lot, I have been in physics for quite some times, but I didn't really find machine learning or AI interesting until I had to use it and in my own work. But what about you? How did you find ML so interesting?
Okay, before I want to answer this question, I want to uh, pinpoint something that I liked about the experiments that are done at CERN, because this main point is really interesting. So the question of why I would like machine learning, or why Shirajum likes machine learning, or why would someone be interested to understand machine learning? The thing is that previously, let's say in the in 17th century, for example, what scientists were able to do is basically trying to make some simple observations and try to map them with mathematical functions. For example, the equations that we know, the simplest of them is Newtonian's law of attraction, for example. So we basically tried to understand the relationships between the observations and the outcomes. But the thing is that it isn't always as simple as that. We cannot always find a simple function that just takes these inputs and maps them to a certain output. And that's why, for example, at CERN, scientists do not rely heavily on trying to understand, like, for example, drawing the slopes and trying to see or for example, trying to try to theoretically come up with something that maps these data, because when the variables grow, when we're talking about thousands or hundreds of variables, estimating the function is not going to be easy at all. And this is the key interesting part about machine learning, because machine learning Well, basically, you're especially in deep learning, we just don't need to understand the relationships ourselves, but we take it as an optimization problem. And we try to find the function automatically that maps the observations to the outcomes. So for me personally, when I tried to understand, when I was exploring different sciences since I was young, I was interested in learning everything, but I also had a very strong passion into, let's say, the hard sciences, physics, mathematics, etc. And but I also had a very big interest in the making process, in the engineering process. So I always wanted to create. And as time goes on, and as I experimented with different kinds of sciences and technologies, I finally could find that making a machine learning model and training it, making something intelligent from scratch, is very, very fascinating. And since I tried for the first time, I think it was like 2015 or something. And at that time, there wasn't a. I mean, for example, for those who know, TensorFlow and PyTorch were their very, very, very beginning, and people had to manually make the optimization process, the auto differentiation, etc. So it was more more of a challenge that more of a challenge that I had to take, especially with a high school student. So I was barely in high school. So I didn't have even the mathematical background enough to understand these models. But I tried my best to mimic, to recreate previous projects of people and just try to understand how they work. And since that time, I found myself more and more interesting and more investing into learning machine learning and its applications in different places and sciences, etc.
Yeah. So you actually started much earlier than me. But in my case, it's always like this. I just switch quite fast, between different fields because in my high school, I was more into biology. And then all of a sudden, in undergrad, I was more like physics oriented. So the switch was so fast. A lot of people didn't expect that to happen. And similarly, like I just started my PhD at Warsaw University of Technology, and then someday I was given some ML models to try, for the particle identification, and I fell in love with it. Like when I realized the different kind of models that exist, the mathematical logic behind it, and the kind of application. So we will do actually a dedicated podcast later on to kind of explain why we need AI. I think that is something we will discuss some other day because there are so many things to discuss. You could, for example, explain your field, and I could also share about the big data that we handle at CERN. So it's actually nearly impossible to analyze all the data that we record at CERN. And it's very interesting for you because I hear some people asking, why is AI development necessary? Why do we have to go that way? And for quite some times, I came across these discussions, usually in social media, where people discuss about whether AI will replace all our jobs, and then someday we will just notice that we are no longer needed anymore. Companies will fire us. Our institutes will fire us because AI can do everything, right? So there is a sense of fear, uncertainty, specifically among people who do not use AI or ML or not much familiar with it. Even those who are familiar with it, there are questions, concerns, but of course, the type of concerns are different for the two groups of people who use it and who don't. Now I'm particularly talking about people who don't. So I come across this question quite often. Why do we have to develop AI, and while it is going to replace humans eventually? And I try to understand, where does this fear come from? Because this is not something I haven't heard before. You know what I mean? So while growing up, I heard numerous stories from my mother that in the 90s, of when first computers became a thing, and people had to give up typewriters and stenographers for their job, and a lot of people back then were panicking that computers are going to take their jobs away, and that was it. That was the end of everything. Computers are going to take everything over, and someday the machines are going to control us. And then some people like my mother, she was like a very young student like Iheb back then, and she decided to learn computer, become a programmer, and eventually started her own computer school. So back then I was very, very young. I was a toddler, so I don't of course remember those days, but I heard those stories. And growing up, I have seen our computer school receiving lots of students from from very top ranking positions in the banking sector, and also like different governmental positions. So basically, eventually, these same people who resisted, computers, eventually realized the potential. So what really happened? I don't know if you heard about stenotype machines. Have you? You have no. So
Yeah, yeah.
you have heard about
With some
stenotype. Like, I haven't seen one with my own eyes. Okay, let's admit it, but I have heard about it. So how the stenotype machines work is that uh, in the 90s, in the banking sector and even in the court proceedings, people had to transcribe oral spoken words, and they didn't have computer back then. So what they did, they used a machine called stenotype machine. It is a 22 key coded device, and you could like hold multiple keys simultaneously to write phrases and words. And even the proficient people could write as much as 300 to 375 words per minute. And then we had typewriters, of course. Again, I saw in museums, and not in a workplace anymore. Now everybody use computers. So yeah, so at the time, those were the machines used in banking sector, in day-to-day like court proceedings and so forth. Even now, I think in court proceedings they do use stenotype machine in some countries. However, in banking sector back then, these stenotype machines were used to transcribe the spoken words, and it took a lot of time. Like if you had to prepare one official document at the bank, you had to wait there a few hours before that document was basically ready. And this is where computer came in. It just made that same work really fast. Like now you go to bank, how long do you have to wait for an official document? Just few minutes, right? It's ready. So then the question comes, like, so this fear around AI, it's not something new. We have seen it during 90s as well. I heard about it from my mother, how people were resisting it, were scared about it, and how some young people embraced it and built businesses. And then those students who took the first training in our school, these are the people who went out and found jobs, because there was high demand. And this is what is going to happen in case of AI as well. Like in the beginning there will be a lot of frustrations, but eventually more and more companies and services will adopt around AI. What it will do is that it will take out a lot of manual work out of our life, and then we will have more time to do something more productive. So I don't think personally AI is going to be a catastrophe. But what is your opinion about it, Iheb? How do you feel about that?
Okay. I think uh, thinking about the idea of AI replacing humans or even destroying humanity, I think it's more of a science fiction point of view because, okay, when we imagine, we take our imagination and think of the possibilities that are able to happen, and thinking of how AI will be able to take everything and just take it, so that the humans just set aside and they don't do anything, and AI does everything for us, or just start by replacing some people I think it's quite not the thing because AI will always need humans for monitoring. That's one thing. Unless we already develop something that is powerful enough that can uh, that can even replace the monitoring part. But it is generally important for the monitoring part because if you think about it, the banks don't need someone to monitor it. The banks just, for example, when they make computers, like Sherajum said, they could just let the transactions happen without any single point of view on it. Yes, before the bankers had to see every single transaction and they sign it and all the bureaucratic strategies that I had to run. But then when computers came, they did not replace the bankers, but instead, bankers had less time to focus on making writing every single transaction and letting things pass manually. Instead, they just sit in their comfortable chairs and watch the transactions happen, and they just have to monitor it and see if any anomaly happens or if anything suspicious is going on, except that everything is running fine. So I think AI is not going to replace humans. It is going to be a tool that will help humans focus less and ease our jobs potentially. And just one thing to add with that, like with that in mind, I have to pinpoint that AI is just a very simple mathematical formulation uh, that helps us that are controlled exclusively by humans. We are the ones that set it. We are the ones that set the, let's say, the parameters that make these models, and we can change them all the time. We can impose our rules on them. Like for example, when we make large language models like ChatGPT, for example, a a let's say a mathematical model that is used by a computer program that uses your textual commands and it takes them, processes them, and replies to you. Initially, when we train a large language model, we do not have to understand, we don't have to teach it the manners, for example, or teach it what to give the users and what not to, and how to respond. Because initially, we just train it on a knowledge database. Okay, we tell the model, okay, this is the data set. You learn the logic, the human language, you learn all of that, but you don't actually learn how to respond. And then we give the model examples of how to respond, and we train it on responding to that. However, when we make these, when we make large language models initially, they are racist, they are feminist, they say all kinds of wrongdoing, and yeah, like you can hear everything illegal said by ChatGPT when they're in the second phase of their making. But the third phase, which we call reinforcement learning from human feedback, we let the model learn how to what to say and what not to say. It's like taming a pet. Let's say you want to teach your dog or your cat how to sit. So you give them a treat when they actually sit after your command. And for example, you can, I don't know, spray them with water when they eat your food, for example. So you can have a positive treat or a negative treat, aka a punishment. So this is an example, just an example of how to make it. And that's when now, if you try to talk to ChatGPT and tell it, for example, I don't know, any kind of wrongdoing that you want them to do, or you want to manipulate it to say anything racist or anything, they just cannot help you because AI is very, very safe at this point and after these three phases. And AI ethics is a big, big, big part of this whole AI industry thing that we can talk about in another episode. But for now, this is my whole opinion about how AI is going to be present in our future as humans.
Actually, I would like to add on to the word that you use, that is actually more sci-fi than a real fear, and that reminded me of the fact, to add on to the fact that these fears, and there are lots of articles also going around, by the way, because these are written just to catch, uh, catch like, usually there are lots of blogs that are written like that. They just want to go with the hype, so they don't necessarily fact check with researchers, and they don't necessarily always report based on the ground reality. The ground reality, as Iheb said, that AI is absolutely nowhere, even close to take over humanity, or cause us to go extinct, or cause like massive unemployment, the kind of fear mongering that I hear about. So I actually looked into where did these sci-fi stories come from, and then the more I looked into the background of these stories, then I realized these are not new. This happened even in the 90s with the computer revolution. And if you date back, they existed as early as 17th century, when the first automata was available for humans. The automata are like the self-operating machines. For example, the automatic puppets at the time, and then later on they became also like at the time of 1818, when the first Gothic, there was a Gothic novel written by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. And then you see that there is a character created called Frankenstein, and he created something great, and he lost control over it. So there is this fear that human beings always had, that we will lose control over our creation. This fear existed for hundreds of years, and you can see it in popular literature. For example, the story of Frankenstein. If you even go a bit, in the much more recently, in 1984, I'm sure all of you watched the Terminator, right? You watched Terminator movie, and in the Terminator movie, we see Arnold. He actually time travels from 2029 to 1984 to take out Sarah, and Sarah will be the mother of a person who would eventually take over, defeat the hostile AI called Skynet. So the storyline that the AI will be hostile, and if there is a AI, it might try to take humans, down. These kind of ideas, that they existed in Hollywood, they existed in literature for many years now. So these kind of narratives, they remained in human psyche for quite some times. They are not new. So whenever there is a big revolution in science, for example, the emergence of computers that took over almost everything, and then we have the next revolution with AI. So there will be this fear also transmitting in literature. So there will be movies, stories written by people, and that's just human nature, to be scared of something that we create if it would go out of our control. But that's sci-fi. So whenever somebody talks about these things, just remember, whatever you hear, whatever you read, it's not necessarily real. Okay, a lot of accusations against AI, they are basically just sci-fi. So don't be scared about it, but be curious. So the next one question is for the young generation. We are almost out of time, by the way. I was thinking of a 30 minutes stream, but we are almost like 33 minutes, 34 minutes into it now. So the last question: given there are so many concerns about AI, and a lot of people worried about unemployment, about the ethics, concerns with ethics, and so forth, how would you convince young generation to go forward, to learn AI and become a part of this revolution?
Okay, as Shirajum already talked earlier, she talked about how those like in the 90s, those who exploited computers and were the first ones that used the computers while others stayed in fear and they just stayed in their shells, closed on themselves, and not trying to learn new things. Those who started learning computers got the best jobs. And I think for the same thing goes in every century or every time, because uh, I think I will talk mostly about education right now. So before before the emergence of like technology, right, nowadays technology like computers, televisions, etc., people only had books and papers to read. And while I personally believe that reading from a paper or from a book is the best way to learn, because it offers you a visual memory to stay stuck in your mind. You have even more access to you have access to in-depth level uh, topics. So, like a book, for example, a mathematical book will offer you a very detailed roadmap on how to start and how to end in that specific topic. But also later on, the television emerged and the educational programs just appeared, and we were able to actually understand and learn how to learn faster using these, because a person in front of you explaining to you it is much easier than you reading from it, much easier and faster. And for nowadays, like for let's say the previous decade, uh, e-learning became a thing, and we started to learn to use everything that is on the internet to learn. So we had videos all over YouTube and other platforms. So if you ever want to listen to a podcast or learn something new, you just go there and listen, and you get the fruitful, straight to the point information that you want. But now AI is there, and AI is revolutionizing education. And I think exploiting this whole idea of AI, how to use AI. Like there are different ways AI can simplify the learning process. It can give you a customized roadmap to learn whatever you're learning. It gives you straight to the point answers. So we are very lucky in this era. So I think the best thing to do is to exploit the educational resources that AI provides to get yourself boosting your education journey, basically.
Yes, and that's one thing. And at the same time, I would highly recommend young generation and anybody who think they would be working another 10 or 15 years. Okay, if you want your job, uh, I think you should take AI very seriously. At least get used to the kind of different applications that already exist, and also, if possible, try to learn. Try to learn because in the future, whether AI takes your job or not, but another human who knows AI will most definitely take your job. So it's a bit like computers. Eventually, with time, in the beginning of 90s in Bangladesh, there were not many people who knew computers. So we had a computer school, we had many students, and within 5 to 10 years, in every single places, starting from banking sector to government sector, everywhere computers became mainstream. So then there was a high demand of people who could use computers. So I'm just trying to draw this parallel to actually uh, inspire people to start it from now. uh, it just begun, and AI is growing really fast, and in the next few years you will be seeing a lot of services, they will start using AI because it's just easy. It makes a lot of manual work. It takes a lot of manual work and it makes it automated. So that's a very good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but as you have also said, that we still need humans. So I think the concern should be more about workers' rights. If you ask me, what should be our concern? AI? No. The concern should always be the workers' rights. Government's own policies towards it should be there. Okay. But if you are scared of AI, I would say don't be scared, or don't be negative about it. Instead, there are plethora of information online, lots of online courses. From now on, if you learn it in advance, later on, when your own field would need people with skills in AI development or machine learning development, you can become the one to get that jobs. And for the youngsters, people who are 18, 19, or even younger, I would say that take it very, very seriously to learn AI, because in the future, if you can come up with an application, okay, you can actually become quite successful. Just come up with an application before somebody else. And it's not that hard. Some of the world's most successful scientists, most successful AI expert, they are very young. Okay. So being successful is not dependent on age, but to recognize an opportunity and come up with a solution before somebody else does. And that is how you stay ahead from other people. So my suggestion for young generation, and also for anybody else who would be working in the future for many years to come, I would highly recommend to take it seriously, and yeah, from now on. So yeah, that was the main motive of our discussion today, and in the next episode we would cover more information about why we need AI, like why did this idea even come up, and I think the discussion will really open your eyes to understanding. When I say people, there is no way you can stop it. You know, there is no way you can stop AI development. It's not possible. It started because we need it, and science will go forward, and with science, technology will just keep developing itself. So we humans have to adopt around it. That should be the attitude, and we have to also push for policy reforms to kind of defend people's rights in the process. And someday we can also talk about ethics, because I think a lot of people do not know how in science and also in engineering we have ethics in place. We cannot just develop and do whatever we want. It's not like our own private lab and we can do whatever we want. So we are definitely we do have ethics in place. We have experts who raise concerns. We have discussions, what is ethically plausible, what is not. So those all discussions we can do later. And thanks, Iheb, for a very, very fruitful discussion today. I can't believe it's already 42 minutes now. So I guess we can wrap up here today, and hope to have another discussion with you soon.
Thank you, Shidazroom. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm really happy for our conversation today. And if you find this fruitful, follow up with the next episodes.
Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like, so that you can get notification for the next video. So bye.
Bye.